Hello and welcome to this test presentation for Public Speaking New Techniques. My name is Ben Archibald. I'm the General Manager of the Union of Students in Ireland, and I have experience in coaching in public speaking, writing speeches for some quite interesting people, and developing techniques for public speaking to help people who have felt that they just couldn't do it. The reality is all of us can and all of us do all the time. This is a slightly different type of presentation than the ones I normally do on public speaking, because obviously I don't have you in front of me and I can't go through the physical attributes of a public speaker, how to stand up, etc. But I will include notes on that inside the notes for this presentation rather than talk about it, which would be boring. We're not here to bore you. Let's get to the chorus. The essence of public speaking. Why do we do it? What is it? And what's the best way to do it? We do public speaking because if we can get a group of people into a room, a large number of people into a room, to tell them the same thing, that's extremely efficient. Normally in a pre-COVID-19 world, the opportunity to do induction classes with people coming into college was a brilliant thing. You could, in a university or a large college, get 1,000, 2,000 people into one room and tell them all the stuff that they need to know about the Students' Union and engaging with the college. We can't do that now, but we still need to learn the techniques because we'll use them in videos, we'll use them in shout-outs in social media, and the essence of public speaking is necessary to the job that we want to do. So we address multiple people because it's efficient to do so. We use it as an opportunity to show that we're on top of the brief. A lot of people think that public speaking is something to be very nervous about. I'm going to show you that it's not. But people inside the college administration think that if we can take the opportunity to give a coherent public speech, it's evidence that we're on top of our brief. That's very useful for us when we're doing negotiations and work with the college authorities. And then it's something people expect us to be able to do. You got elected to do something. You must have had to do a hustings or record a video at some point. The ability for you to locate through language what your students are going through and to talk about their experiences is vitally important. Before we begin the effort that goes into establishing a speech, writing a speech, making notes and preparing to speak, we have to go through in our minds what we really believe about public speaking. And one of the things that I try to drill into people whenever we talk about public speaking is a few belief points. Believe that the audience is made of gold. What I mean by that is the audience is vitally important. There's no point in public speaking without the public. There's no point in conveying the needs of the students unless you care deeply about the students and you care deeply about the audience receiving the message. We can't have contempt for audience. We have to have the audience's best interests at heart. And so we say that the audience is made of gold. And so is the message. The second thing we believe is that wasting someone's time is a horrible thing to do. We really ought not to do it. Time is a non-renewable resource. We can't get it back. We have a limited amount of time to spend listening to you, and you owe it to us to make sure that you use that time effectively. If you've nothing useful to say, don't stand and speak for the sake of it. But if you have something useful to say, do the message and your audience justice by preparing properly. The third thing is we don't lie in a speech. There's no point in standing up in front of people and telling them an untruth. The essence of messaging is the truth well told. We got into this business to do good things for students, to do good things for good people. And so we owe it to them to ensure that whenever we stand up to represent them, we do it in good faith. How do we go about writing a speech? I say there are two main techniques that are useful inside a Students' Union environment. Now, there are many techniques for speech writing. And so me to say there are two main techniques should make most people shudder. But there are two methods that are extremely effective in conveying information and getting points across to students, getting points across to college administration, to members of the public and general audiences. And those two main techniques are what I call the roadmap method and the address method. They're subtly different And you could, at first flush, look at them and think, well, they're the same thing, but they're really not. In the roadmap method, what we do with a speech is we level with the audience. We tell them what we will say. We then say it, and then we remind them what we said. So say what you'll say it, say what you said. This technique is useful in attempting to convince people that you thought an argument through, and it's potentially useful in reinforcing a message to skeptical people. My name is Ben Archibald. My name is Ben Archibald. As I told you, my name is Ben Archibald. It doesn't sound very impressive now, but we'll give you an example towards the end of this session that shows that the roadmap method is an effective way of getting information into someone's head and keeping it there. Particularly, we use the roadmap method when we're trying to ask people to do something and that there's some technical aspect to that thing that we're asking them to do. Where we say, we have a demonstration happening on Thursday and I need as many students as possible to come to the front quad to take part in that demonstration. And then I talk to them about the demonstration that's happening on Thursday in the front quad and that we need lots of students to be there for that session. And then I close the speech by saying, so in conclusion, a major demonstration representing the interests and needs of the students takes place on Thursday in the front quad, and I need you there to help. That's the roadmap method. It can extend to speeches about 10 minutes long if necessary, but in general, most of the speeches we'll be giving, most of the speeches you'll be giving, will be much shorter in nature. And so the roadmap method allows us to order our thoughts, provide technical information, and reinforce that technical information inside people's minds. There'll be an example at the end. It might not be the greatest speech you've ever heard, but I guarantee you'll learn and remember something from the speech that's given. Then the second approach is the address method. The address method is a little bit more technically demanding because it requires the creation of a speech which is essentially a lot more thoughtful, a lot more rhetorical in its nature, and it should really be what we used to think of as a speech. It should really be talking in big picture terms with a core message. It should have a beginning, a middle and an end, and the middle bit should cause the audience to think about the messages that you're seeking to convey. It's useful to rally people who are already open to your message. So your supporters, the students themselves, people who are basically on board but need to know more. The address method helps them to know that more, and it gives people more message to work on. So in the roadmap method, we're conveying technical information, stuff that we want people to retain and stuff that we want to be impactful quickly so that they can act on that information. And in the address method, we're giving people lots more base. We're giving people lots more general information and more information about the way that you think and the way that the Students' Union thinks about a particular issue. How do we begin a speech? Well, beginning a speech isn't an easily agreed on concept. Lots of people have different ways of opening a speech. And for me, there are a few methods that you can apply that increase your impact. We're always thinking about impact because students are busy and students have a lot going through their minds. And students, let's face it, are attending lectures. Whenever you have got your opportunity to speak to students, they've also been in lectures, in tutorial groups, in study groups, in the library, in labs. They've been taking in a lot of information already. It's your job to give them that little bit more, but you have to do it in a way that's impactful. So if you're going to be introduced by somebody, then you don't need to introduce yourself again. It's natural inside the student movement for all of us to want to stand up and say who we are and what we do. But if someone else is going to do that for you, you just need to accept. It's been done. You don't need to introduce yourself. This creates an opportunity to do something quite stylish with the start of your speech. Now, if you have a host who is introducing you, and who's better known to the audience than you are. So this person may be a member of the college administration, this person may be a celeb, this person may be last year's president that all students already know already. Then you have an opportunity to establish a connection through the host that establishes your bona fides, so to speak. So in other words, we can say something like, well, listen, I want to thank Quiva for inviting me to say a few words here. Derek has been very kind to invite me to come and talk to you today, so I want to thank him and thank the committee for giving me a few minutes to bring some of my thoughts to your attention. By doing that, you establish, it's a quick connecting method to a rapport with the audience. Of course, if they hate Quiva or Derek, you're in some difficulty. Let's hope that they don't. And if nobody is there to introduce you, or the person who was supposed to introduce you doesn't do it, then you have to introduce yourself. But if you do have to introduce yourself, the more concise you can be, the more powerful it will be. You should be proud of the position you now have inside the student movement, right? And we're all very impressed that you have that role. But we don't need it to be hammered every time you stand up to speak. It doesn't need to be hammered every time you stand up to speak. It might need to be with new audiences, or where you're talking to people for the first time, or where you have a sense that they have no idea who the Students' Union is or represents. I used who there, my mistake. In those circumstances, you need to introduce yourself and do it as concisely as possible. So you can stand up and say, just as a matter of fact, hello, my name is Winnie the Pooh, and I am the president of the Students' Union, and I'm here to talk to you about, by minimizing your sense of how important your job is, although it's an important job, and concentrating on the importance of the message, that will convey to people that you think that the message is more important than your job title. That is how it should be, and it will be positively received by the audience. So there are some fun ways to start a speech. You don't have to stand up with, hello everybody, my name is Winnie the Pooh and I'm the president of the Students' Union. Just so you know, when I'm recording this, there is a Winnie the Pooh teddy bear beside me, which is why it was the first name that came into my head. Hello, my name is Winnie the Pooh and I am the president of the Students' Union is factual, but it's not a particularly fun way to start a speech. I like the impactful, strict launch method, which is the one I'm talking about here on the left of the screen. Consider ignoring formality and launch immediately into the most important thing, the portent, we call it, in the message. So I stand up in front of people, someone has introduced me, and instead of introducing myself again, which we've already determined is not necessary, I might thank the person for inviting me to speak, thank them for their time, and then immediately launch straight into the portent and the message. Education is changing, and no one is listening to the experts in being educated. That introduces the portent of the message. You're telling them right at the get-go that you're not here to waste their time. You're not mucking around. You are giving them the message that you intend to ram home over the next few minutes. You're giving it up front, and then you're going to justify that message, and then you're going to recap on that message at the end. And that works for both the address method and the roadmap method that we spoke about earlier. So I like that approach because it's not normal. And inside an academic environment, it is particularly not normal, because one of the first things that lots of people in an academic environment like to do is establish their academic bona fides. That's necessary for them, but it's not necessary for Students' Union officers. You were elected to do your job. And so therefore, whenever you stand up to speak, you speak with the full authority of the students who elected you to do your job. That's one way to go about doing it. And it can be an exhilarating way for your audience to hear a message as well. If I go into any kind of public meeting where there are 6 or 7 people speaking, which will be another opportunity for you to do some public speaking, and they all stand up and they open their speeches in the same sort of way, then for me to do something different makes me automatically get heard differently from the way that they're heard. And that gives me not an advantage, but it should give me it should give me a confidence advantage. We'll talk about confidence in a few minutes. We're getting towards the end. If you're feeling nervous, I recommend going for a warm and friendly, humorous opening. We're never apologizing for who we are. We are taking the opportunity to speak on behalf of our members, and we're proud of doing that. And so we might start with something, friendly and lovely. And I'm not an expert in being warm, friendly, and lovely, but one thing I will tell you is never open with a joke. Opening with a joke is a mistake, because if you were nervous before a joke bombed, and the joke does bomb, you'll be much more nervous afterwards. So I tend to say that in those circumstances, we start off with something like, thank you, Quiva, for giving me the opportunity to come and address the audience today. And thank you so much for your time as well. It's funny that, and then something that's funny. Again, not an expert in things that are funny, but starting off with a soft launch is useful when you're nervous, because it creates an opportunity for people to warm to you at the start. And when people warm to you, you know it. Your audience comes across to you where they're present. Now, a word about public speaking during lockdown. You might have seen humorous comedy TV shows that are recorded with no studio audience, where in the past they were recorded with a studio audience. And that lack of feedback, the lack of a laugh, the lack of warmth from the audience leaves those shows cold, and it takes the presenters of those shows quite a long time to get into a new stride and work out how to speak directly to camera in a way that's warm and friendly. That's why you need to think carefully about the way in which you want to portray yourself as warm and friendly and give a humorous opening. If you're going to be delivering a speech over video link, over Skype or Zoom or something like that to an audience, think carefully about which of those two makes sense for you, and recognize a couple of things that we're going to deal with towards the end of the presentation.